we do get to see on Championship Sunday always put on a fantastic showing of top quality Pokemon.
Yeah, and it's always exciting as well to see these trainers who've had, you know, such past achievements make it to the final stage here at the World Championships. Teddy, you know, he, like you said, he won the European International Championships, but he won it with a very different team. You know, we'll take a look at that team in a moment, but I think one of the things that you look for in somebody who is going to be a world champion is that ability to sort of pivot their strategy, you know, run something that fits, you know, the situation best. And in his case, I mean, look at that team. You have the Stakataka, the Ferrothorn, the Mawile. It's a very heavy Trick Room team compared to the Xerneas-Rayquaza combination at EUIC.
Yeah, and he's been doing really well all season, not just the European International Championships, but good performances at regionals. And this all comes off the back of a top 8 performance at Worlds last year. So a player of pedigree here in the junior division, looking to kind of go a little bit further. He's gone really far at Worlds before, been having a really good season at all levels, regional, international, and this could be the potential cherry on top for him with a World Championship title on the line. He is, of course, not going unopposed. His opponent in P-Woo bringing a very different team to Teddy, something we've seen a little more standard compared to some of those Masters Division team, but been having a fantastic year for himself as well. Top 4 in the most recent international championships in North America, regional wins for him as well, special event wins. So the same kind of, you know, look and feel across that run through these tournaments. A good performance last year, built on across the 2019 season, putting him in pole position to try and cap it all off with that title.
And what a fun team to do it with as well. You know, that Rayquaza-Xerneas combination has just done incredible throughout the Ultra format. You know, Rayquaza is one of the most versatile Pokemon, I think, in the format right now, just because you don't need to hold a Mega Crystal necessarily to access the Mega Rayquaza to get that power up. And as a result, it really allows you to run it in a multitude of ways. In the Masters Division yesterday, we saw a lot of trainers with that Mega Rayquaza run it with something like the Pinch Berry, you know, bulky, slow, control, allowing, you know, for more pivots, more damage overall. But in the juniors division, you know, I'm really excited to see how exactly these trainers have adapted these teams for their play style. You know, the team that he's running looks very similar to the team he had in the top 4 at the North American International Championships. You have to wonder, maybe did he change things up? Maybe was he inspired by some of the plays that he saw that weekend? And I can't wait to see just how exactly this matchup is going to play out.
Well, if you take a team to the top 4 of a huge international championships, it is, I guess, a little bit of an ask, right, to say, oh, you must throw it all out the window and build a brand new team. So sticking with that team, maybe learning a little bit more about a couple of matchups that caused some problems, maybe the matchup that finally ended a tournament. Once you know how to navigate around that and that little extra piece of information, the team becomes a whole different beast just by learning it, just by playing it a little differently in some situations. It's really interesting to see players who do stick with their team, really keep on going with it, and just push on every single game. We do, of course, have the team selection up, and it's going to be a tough one, I think, for both players. You don't want to lose that early game. You don't want to concede game 1 and be forced to win 2 back-to-back. But I think there's some pretty clear strategies. Teddy French locking in the team very quickly, and P-Woo following up. That whole team selection taking less than 20 seconds. These players know exactly what they want to do.
Yeah, they both did have the benefit of having last night to maybe relax, prepare a bit for this matchup. And, you know, looking at the teams they brought on paper, it's going to be interesting. Like, Teddy's strategy, at least with the Pokemon he brought, really does revolve around Trick Room. That form of speed control, when it sets up, means slow Pokemon move first. And, you know, P's Amoonguss, which will be sent out on his side of the field, really is one of the only Pokemon he has available to him to sort of stop that strategy.
Well, if there's a Pokemon you're going to try and beat Trick Room with, Amoonguss is definitely top of many lists for that. It's so slow, it can spore, and of course the reduced priority of Trick Room means you're guaranteed to get that spore in before the potential Trick Room. Of course, if Teddy's looking to Trick Room now, Smeargle is one of those partners that does help out in so many ways. Being able to have that crazy wide moveset, being able to have access to some moves that you may not expect, maybe able to catch your opponent off guard in at least one game, certainly make it interesting. It's going to be a very defensive turn for Teddy, though, as he protects his Necrozma and his spiky shields with the Smeargle. The Amoonguss also protecting itself, and Incineroar just throat chopping, heading towards the Necrozma, but the Protect keeping it safe. I will say I don't think Throat Chop is something we've seen on many Incineroar over the course of this weekend.
No, it certainly is a fun move. It can stop any sound-based moves that the Pokemon that it connects with wants to use moving forwards, but I think that Incineroar just looking to deal some nice, super effective damage down onto that Dawnwing's Necrozma. You know, Teddy playing it very safe. I like how he used Protect that turn, and I liked how P went for that Protect as well. I think both these trainers are looking for that opportunity once Trick Room is up to maybe use some of their slower Pokemon. And, you know, otherwise, you know, not worry about the fake out, maybe not worry about losing something like the Focus Sash on the Smeargle moving forward.
Well, we are going to see some damage starting out this turn.
So much.
Throat Chop lands on this Dawnwing's Necrozma, bringing it down to just 12 health. Incineroar got to go first, but looks like Dawnwing's Necrozma immediately starting to fire back with the Z move. We've seen this come out a few times from some of these. It's going to do a whole lot of damage. The menacing Moonraze Maelstrom, I mean, it's probably not heading towards Incineroar.
No.
Amoonguss is going to be the target for it. Wants to maybe play his Trick Room once that is gone. Amoonguss, though, pretty bulky. One of those Pokemon that is usually designed to stick around and do a whole lot of work when it can. And we'll see exactly how much Teddy can do. He looks pretty pleased that he's been able to connect that, though.
Yeah, and that Amoonguss is going to be just barely within knockout range.
Oh, no.
Looks like Smeargle has brought a surprise of its own, and even though Explosion doesn't do as much as it did in past games, it's certainly going to get that knockout onto that Amoonguss.
Well, I'm going to be honest. Explosion and the Ghost-type Pokemon is something I've not seen in a very, very long time. It's been a few years, but Teddy, wiser than his years may suggest, knowing that that combination, of course, Necrozma won't take any damage from it because of the Ghost type. Incineroar doesn't take that much, but overall, these players exchange a one-for-one Pokemon trade in this turn. Of course, Stack Attacker now coming in. Stack Attacker entering the field after the Amoonguss has gone. Probably a good time to start looking for that Trick Room. We know this Necrozma is exceptionally slow. It has been moving pretty late in the turn. You know, firing off a Menacing Moonraze from late is not usually what you want, but with Stack Attacker coming into play, Teddy must feel pretty good that he can start mixing it up and change his strategy a little bit from the first couple turns.
And look at the incredible matchup this Stack Attacker has against the the Rayquaza and the Incineroar on P's side of the field. Even when that Rayquaza goes for the Mega Evolution, or if P decides to go for that Mega Evolution, you know, the strong winds are only going to weaken damage so much. If he's able to knock out the Stack Attacker here with the Earth Power, which he is, that's certainly a huge thing in P's favor. No Trick Room this turn.
What a cheeky little addition to the Rayquaza, adding the Earth Power, making sure that you can deal with a Pokemon that would usually warm it, like this Stack Attacker. Teddy looking a little bit perturbed that he has lost it so easily. Stack Attacker would deal with a Dragon Ascent on an extreme speed with ease. Even an Earthquake wouldn't be too bad from something like Salamence, but Earth Power easily able to push through and knock out that Salamence. Teddy's whole strategy may have been taken apart by the loss of a single Pokemon here.
And a very interesting move as well onto that Rayquaza. We've been seeing a lot of Rayquaza run those physical attacks. Earth Power is a special attack, so that might be something that he specifically added to his team just for matchups like this, for those slow Trick Room setters, for those Groudons that are weak to those Earth ground type attacks. You know, just a very powerful move in this situation. And looking at Teddy's last two Pokemon, this Groudon is going to have to find some big damage if he wants to even up the score.
Well, P's done very well here in the way that the board has shaken out for him. He does now have access to Delta Stream by Mega Evolving his Rayquaza, and the Desolate Land from Groudon not going to be a concern. I don't think the Fire-type attacks were exactly what he needed, but it's just another door open for P here. He's going to keep going with Rayquaza. He has looked in the bag of tricks and pulled out this Earth Power once, now twice. Teddy pretty perturbed at how much that damage is doing. Incineroar's U-turn will land into this Necrozma, and that's enough to pick out the final bit of damage, leaving nothing but Groudon for Teddy French to try and bring this game back around. We are going to get to see P's final Pokemon in this matchup, but I really think it's going to be too little, too late. Teddy not able to keep firing back, and especially trying to deal with this Rayquaza with the Groudon, a huge, huge ask if you're not using one of those new Dragon Claw ones.
Unfortunately, it is going to be a huge ask, but this is some great information for Teddy. You know, I think Pete revealed sort of how he plans on dealing with that stack attack with that Groudon in this game 1. So Teddy will have the opportunity to adjust his strategy moving forwards. You have to think about what happened at the beginning of, you know, turn 1, turn 2 of that game. We saw Teddy take a very slow start. You know, he protected both of his Pokemon when the Amoonguses on P's side of the field decided to protect. And as a result, I think he lost some time, he lost some momentum, and gave P the opening to get that big damage down before Trick Room was up on the field. You know, looking at the Pokemon that Teddy brought to that game, I think that those were the right Pokemon for that situation, but I think he needs to use that Smeargle a bit more effectively. Maybe don't go for the Spiky Shield, maybe go for something like a Fake Out or a Follow Me or, you know, Spore, or really whatever else Smeargle is trained to do in this format to give your Stack Attacker the opening, assuming it knows Trick Room, to go for Trick Room and then start dealing that big damage.
Well, I think what P did so well was constantly apply pressure to what Teddy was doing. So he starts out with the Amoonguss. He says no to the early Trick Room. That's a big problem, and Teddy is then forced into playing around that, using the Menacing Moonraze Maelstrom followed up by Explosion to deal with Amoonguss. Then it looked like he had an opening to set up this Trick Room, which his team, Morwile, Ferrothorn, Stack Attacker, so clearly designed and relying on. But as soon as he'd got rid of the Amoonguss, he felt good. He brought in the Stack Attacker, and P very wisely bringing in that Rayquaza. On top of that, knowing that he had an exact answer on how to deal with it.
Yeah.
The Earth Power reveal, so smart. And going into this game, Teddy has to mix up his playstyle. He can't deal with it the same way. And I think P able to just apply so much pressure. I did like how he used Rayquaza to deal with the Desolate Land. I just think there's got to be some changes, and P really just went on an onslaught as soon as that Rayquaza entered the field.
Yeah, and I look at how that Smeargle was used as well during that game 1. I mean, it went for Spiky Shield, then immediately went for an Explosion. I mean, it certainly was a surprising move, and I really liked how, you know, it definitely caught P off guard, but, you know, Smeargle has so much more utility that it can bring with it, and unfortunately, you know, yes, it did go for an Explosion, but it also had to remove itself from the field as a result, and I think that was just too high of a cost for Teddy to pay going into this game. It's always hard when you lose a Pokemon, especially, you know, when you only have 4 Pokemon available for you during a match, and making the decision to remove one of your own Pokemon cannot be taken lightly. And I like how Teddy mixed things up going into this game, because I think he's going on much more of an offensive, and Groudon and that Dawnwings Necrozma are certainly the 2 Pokemon that you'd want to do so in this situation.
This changes it up so much for Teddy French, now able to apply a whole different kind of pressure than he did with the Smeargle. Of course, P in no need to mix it up. That lead works so well, caused so many plays to be forced from his opponent's hand there, that really able to dominate the early part of the game. I love this adaptation. If you know Amoonguss was going to be the problem, which it was, then the Groudon is going to start causing some issues. At the same time, though, you do still have access to Incineroar with the potential Fake Out. You do still have access to Amoonguss with a Spore if Trick Room's trying to get set up. So we'll see if P can open up an advantage there. There is, of course, the exchanging of Protects. Just to start this one out, Incineroar's Fake Out lands into the protecting of the Groudon. And then the Amoonguss' Spore will land into that Dawnwings Necrozma. So Teddy keeping himself safe this turn and trying to play exactly the same turn, I think, just without the threat of Fake Out.
Certainly an interesting position for P to be in going into turn 2, because, you know, this Amoonguss certainly is going to be slower than that Groudon. We saw Necrozma's Z move last game deal so much damage to it. It's possible that something like an attack from this Groudon and that Z move again from that Necrozma could easily take it out, at which point, you know, Teddy would be in a better opportunity to, again, send that Stack Attacker in and go for Trick Room. The Incineroar will help deal damage. That Throat Chop did a ton to that Necrozma, but again, if Groudon targets the right Pokemon here, I think P will still be in a very strong position in this game.
Well, we'll see what switches in for the Incineroar after the Amoonguss does decide to protect itself. Teddy looked pretty pleased when he saw the Amoonguss Protect come through, so probably targeting that slot on the right where Incineroar once stood. Of course, P given the opportunity now to switch it up in the middle of a turn after the move has been locked in from Teddy. Tapu Fini, the choice in this one. Interestingly enough, going to bring Misty Terrain to the field, so limiting some of those Amoonguss' options a little way down the line. As Groudon starts out with an Eruption. Not going to be too effective on this Tapu Fini, but they're a bulky Pokemon, and every bit of damage certainly helps We do see it brought down probably a little over a quarter there. Necrozma follows up with an Earth Power. This would have been a fantastic turn to land onto the Incineroar. That Tapu Fini bought just under half of its health. A rough switch in, but P, keeping some interesting board positioning, is still probably a little bit scared of something like the Trick Room. And now he opens up some doors with Tapu Fini and other players to deal with that Groudon.
Yeah, and just a really great defensive switch as well, because that Tapu Fini didn't take a lot of damage from the Eruption, didn't take a lot of damage from the Earth Power from that Necrozma. So really great positioning for P, but he needs to find a way of capitalizing on it. I think this Tapu Fini will have the benefit of, you know, moving prior to at least one or two of these Pokemon on Teddy's side of the field due to the slow speed. But how is it going to capitalize on that?
Well, there's one way to capitalize, and that is by taking a better control of the weather. Rayquaza comes in with his airlock ability. The effects of the weather have disappeared, but Teddy is so scared of that play, he keeps the Groudon protected. A very smart protect there as Scald lands into the protect. Saw that one coming a mile off. Necrozma finally takes the opportunity. It's been desperately trying for 2 games now and gets the Trick Room set up. So this Tapu Fini isn't going to have as much time to try and get a Scald in.
And think about the board positioning for Teddy right now. What was the #1 thing he was afraid of in that Trick Room? The Amoonguss. Why was he afraid of the Amoonguss? The Spore. P brought the Tapu Fini with the Misty Terrain on the field, and because all of Teddy's Pokemon are making contact with that terrain, they cannot be put to sleep while it's still active.
Yeah.
So P, you know, yes, he made a very great defensive switch so that, you know, that Incineroar could stick around, but unfortunately, he brought the terrain, and he gave Teddy the opportunity to go for Trick Room. His Pokemon are going to be faster now. They're operating in the weather of their choice with that Groudon, so it's time for Teddy to just start taking knockouts if he wants to remain in this game.
Well, he seems in a pretty good turn about this, in a good mood. He sees his opponent in P-Woo just double protecting, trying to wear down some of those turns of Trick Room, and the Z move heading out. Of course, it will still deal some damage through the protect, but not the amount of damage you want to see from menacing Moonray's Maelstrom. He seemed pretty happy when Tapu Fini protected itself, maybe thinking that he'd already targeted the Rayquaza, but right now, of course, both of these Pokemon taking reduced damage from the Z move. It's better than nothing, I will say that. The Rayquaza's not Mega Evolved yet. You know, it would be a nice time to try and get rid of it, but your Z move isn't providing the maximum damage output it could.
But it is doing something, and we'll have to see just how much this chip damage is going to matter as we progress throughout this game. Because both of P's Pokemon protected this turn, you know, he's going to be forced to either switch or just not go for another protect in the second turn, which is great on paper if you want to avoid something, you know, like the Trick Room, if you want to slowly whittle down those turns. But every single turn where you're forced to take a step back, you're forced to use protect, you're forced to use, you know, to switch to keep your Pokemon around on the field, that's another turn that Teddy can safely go for these eruptions, can go for those Moongeist beams or those Earth Powers from that Necrozma, and start, again, slowly applying chip damage to your team. This Groudon's at full health, the Sunlight is still on the field. If Rayquaza switches out, it will get the power-up with those eruptions, and it's just going to be such a, you know, powerful Pokemon that he has to find a way to handle.
I think the big thing for Teddy there is he wanted to start taking knockouts sooner rather than later, because his options now to pick up a double knockout while Trick Room turns do start to wear down did become a little bit limited because of that protect. I think something like Incineroar or Amoonguss would have been much preferred. The Necrozma leaving the field in place of Stakataka, and Rayquaza leaving the field in place of Incineroar. So both trainers trying to reposition themselves in the back end of this Trick Room.
And you have to wonder what this Tapu Fini is going to go for this turn. It can't go for Scald anymore because the Sunlight is active on the field. It's going to be great information for Teddy, you know, moving forward in this game to know, okay, this is how this Tapu Fini might operate in the future. RP just not willing to give up that information.
We'll see exactly what they decide to do after this position. I do like the change into Incineroar. We always talk about how Trick Room has such a limited window, a little longer than something like Tailwind, but with just 2 turns remaining, you can basically stall through another one of them, or at least not take damage from something you're scared of by using Fake Out. Right now, the options are kind of tough if you're P. Which do you decide to Fake Out? Do you deal with Stakataka, or do you deal with Groudon? Either of them are going to put down a whole lot of damage, but it's really which one it's going to damage. The Groudon would be able to deal with Incineroar quite handily.
And you also have to look at the Pokemon that P has in the back. You know, we know that Rayquaza has access to Earth Power. Maybe you fake out the Pokemon that would most threaten your Rayquaza later on and then start dealing damage otherwise.
It is the Groudon that's going to be victim of the Fake Out, unable to do anything this turn. And a Rock Slide follows up from Stack Attacker, a large amount of damage on Incineroar. Rock Slide, a move we've not seen as much in the last couple of years, I think. And very importantly, the mist has disappeared. So Piwu taking that Tapu Fini out, not just to save it for later, but also allow his Amoonguss to start playing properly. This is going to be the last turn of Trick Room, so it may force Teddy to just defend for this turn. But then the Amoonguss is going to keep applying pressure. I think if P can actually keep that Tapu Fini off the field for a while, he's going to be able to force Teddy to play a different way. That said, Groudon is still on the field. It's still pretty healthy, and it's still looking at two Pokemon that it doesn't mind dealing with.
But what an amazingly timed switch from P. You know, he switched in that Amoonguss right as the Misty Terrain, expired on the field, and Incineroar stopped that Groudon from potentially knocking out the Amoonguss, and has given himself an opening to, again, put one of these two Pokemon to sleep, and hopefully allow his Rayquaza starting the next turn once Trick Room is over to get those KOs and win him the game.
This is a cheeky little substitute from Stack Attacker, trying to keep itself safe from the Spore. It doesn't work on a substitute, and that means the Groudon in the final turn of Trick Room is going to be able to erupt and knock out the Amoonguss. Teddy French showing just how good Stack Attacker can be behind the substitute. It is naturally slower than the Amoonguss. It was going first in that Trick Room, which just ran out. But this Stack Attacker doesn't have to worry for at least one more turn about getting caught with the Earth Power from Rayquaza. If the Rayquaza does decide to Earth Power, that's fine. It's going to go into the substitute. Tapu Fini's options, probably a little limited on how to deal with it. We do know it has Scald. That could be tough. But really smart play there to avoid the Spore and at least open some more doors for Teddy French.
And that substitute as well will mean that Stack Attacker, unless P decides to double into it this turn, should have a very safe opportunity to try and get Trick Room back up on the field. Hypothetically, if this Groudon protects and the Stack Attacker is able to get Trick Room up, a few more eruptions and we'll be looking at a Game 3.
We'll see where P decides to send his attacks in this one. It is the first turn without Trick Room. Rayquaza protecting itself. So Teddy feeling pretty good that he's going to be able to at least do something with this Stack Attacker. Groudon also protecting. Doesn't want to get caught by Scald while the airlock is in play. Tapu Fini's Scald will connect with the substitute for Stack Attacker, but that could be completely null and void if Stack Attacker just decides to set up exactly what it wants. The substitute easily fading, not taking all that well. And Stack Attacker sets up another Trick Room for Teddy.
And this is going to be very difficult, I think, for P to stall out, as we saw him do with the first Trick Room in this game. The Amoonguss is gone. All of his Pokemon are, they've taken so much damage. The Rayquaza, the Tapu Fini, they're in the yellow, the Incineroar as well. It will be able to get an Intimidate down on that Stack Attacker, which means it won't be, dealing as much with those Rock Slides. But, he has to find 5 turns if he wants to try and wait for that Trick Room to expire. And I think those turns are just going to be really hard to find. Meanwhile, this Groudon is at full health. The Stack Attacker, slowest thing in Trick Room. And Teddy still has the Dawnwings Necrozma and one other Pokemon in the back.
There's no way to find the 5 turns with 3 Pokemon, all of which have taken damage to bring them under half health. There's no amount of switching that you can do to really force that, unless you can weave in perfect attacks through numerous protects. You're going to be in a great position. Right now, both the Pokemon who have been in that left spot in this turn, Rayquaza at the beginning and Incineroar now, yeah, Incineroar's landing an Intimidate. That's going to help out a little bit against the Stack Attacker. But at the end of the day, it's just going to be Teddy able to launch attacks over and over again. The Gyro Ball, first up from Stack Attacker towards Tapu Fini, enough for a knockout there. That's obviously a really helpful move. Stack Attacker's Beast Boost will come into play, probably doesn't need it. Its attack goes back up.
Oh, interesting.
Makes up for the drop earlier from the Intimidate. There, of course, is the little loss of health and life orb. And Incineroar on its own, able to cling on against the Groudon. Obviously, a little bit of damage taken on that Groudon means eruption, not at full power. But we didn't see a berry activate on that Incineroar. Confirmation for Teddy, if he didn't already know of the potential item over there. Knowing how much the eruption did may help him. But right now, P-Woo may be able to buy a turn with Fake Out, but 4 Pokemon to go through with just a low health Incineroar and a relatively unhealthy Rayquaza.
Yeah, I think if Teddy wants to win this game, all he has to do is double into that Rayquaza slot over the next few turns. Fake Out could potentially stop one of these Pokemon this turn. That Rayquaza could go for that Protect again like we saw earlier on in the game, but eventually, as long as you have 2 Pokemon on the field targeting 1 Pokemon, there's something's going to connect eventually, and that's going to deal enough damage most likely to get that KO.
Well, Stack Attacker is the choice of Fake Out target from P's Incineroar. Not allowed to play the game on this turn. The Eruption will pick up the knockout on Incineroar and just leave Rayquaza clinging on with an absolute sliver of health. Rayquaza's Earth Power following up will make sure that he gets at least 1 knockout in this game, as Stack Attacker is felled. But with 3 Pokemon remaining and no real easy spread attack options from this Rayquaza, it looks like this finals is going to be heading to game number 3.
And I loved how Teddy adjusted going into this game. You know, that Groudon and that Dawnwing's Necrozma, just such a powerful lead. I think it caught P a little bit off guard. You know, he had the Incineroar, he had the Amoonguss lead that we saw in game 1, which worked great when, you know, Teddy was trying to use the Necrozma and the Smeargle to maybe buy an opening for Trick Room. But when you're facing down 2 very powerful Pokemon, when that Amoonguss can be knocked out really by any fire type attack that Groudon decides to bring with it, you know, also could be knocked out by enough Moongeist beams based off how much damage that Z-move did. Yep. You just can't really start off on the back foot, because once Trick Room is up, once those heavy hitters start dealing damage and doing what they do best, it's just very hard to recover from that. You know, Teddy knew how many turns of Trick Room were available, knew how to capitalize on them, and even got Trick Room back up after it had expired. So just really great board positioning, really great management, and I think he's going to have to adjust a little bit and maybe match that offense going into game 3.
It's really impressive to see players who do get Trick Room up safely twice in a game.
Yes.
Of course, setting it up once is important, but we've seen numerous times that it is possible to work your way through that, buy enough of that time to get out on the other side of it, and start playing the game in the regular and expected turn order. That said, Teddy made sure that when it expired, he had an option to set it back up. And being able to play a whole chunk of that game, a significantly large portion of it in the Trick Room, which his team is designed to thrive in, was really the key to victory there. P is going to have to make some adaptations. I think his lead made sense based on the fact it gave him game number 1 in this set. But with game number 3 coming up and the World Championships coming up to just 1 game, you've got to make sure that every step of the way is perfect.
And unfortunately for P, he doesn't really have much on his team that would allow him to reverse the Trick Room. I think a lot of times when trainers are playing such an aggressively Trick Room-oriented team, you really want that Trick Room option of your own. You need something more than just this Amoonguss, unfortunately, to try and power through. You know, looking at the Pokemon that he has with him in his party, we've certainly seen Nihilego use Trick Room throughout this tournament. That might be something that he's been saving for the end, but if he wants to go on this offensive, if he wants to try and stop Teddy's Trick Room from going up with just strictly, you know, damage with attack power, he's going to have to match the threat of Groudon and Dawnwing's Necrozma yet again. And it's going to be a tall ask. It's almost like he has to lead the Rayquaza at this point.
The tough thing is the Rayquaza is being asked to do really double, nearly triple duty, right?
Yeah.
With the Earth Power reveal in game 1, Teddy knows about it. Teddy plays around it very well, but he's really trying to get it to make sure that it does so much work. I think Incineroar did a lot more against that Dawnwing's Necrozma with a Throat Chop. I definitely think that helped a lot in game 1. So there's a number of options. We haven't seen the Nihilego, we haven't seen the Xerneas yet coming out from P. Wu, of course, bringing Xerneas. The standard Geomancy boost is not what you want set up in a Trick Room, so it may be a bit of a stretch to have a team that both blocks Trick Room and allows you to set up and sweep with Xerneas. There is, of course, a number of great support Pokemon there with Amoonguss and Incineroar, but I feel like just maybe changing up the order of his Pokemon is the way. Yeah,
and I mean, talking about Xerneas, it really doesn't like Steel-type Pokemon, and even though we've only seen that Stack Attacker from Teddy, he also has the Mawile and the Ferrothorn available for him, so I just don't think this is the matchup for Xerneas, unfortunately.
Absolutely not. The leads have taken the field, and Teddy sticking with what got him back in the game in game number 2. Necrozma and Groudon. P. Wu sticking, tried and true, got him a win in game number 1. So why not, right? Amoonguss and Incineroar. Maybe if you play it a little differently, don't fall foul of any Protect, you could win this World Championships. It does all come down to this though, at 1-1. The Junior Division Finals has just 1 game to go.
And if you think back to game 2, and when Teddy set up Trick Room, he waited for that Tapu Fini to be revealed, he waited for the Misty Terrain to be activated, and he waited for that Amoonguss to be unable to use Spore to sort of slow Teddy down. So that's something that P's in control of. Teddy doesn't have access to terrain. If he wants to stop the Amoonguss from using Spore, he has to knock it out. So I think P has that to his advantage. He can kind of, decide when that's going to happen. He has to be very careful, though. Going back to Game 1, Game 2, Teddy used Protect turn 1 on both his Pokemon each time. If Teddy mixes things up here, if he goes for something different, this could be an opening for P to start dealing some big damage.
Well, P immediately removing the Amoonguss from play. Doesn't want to even try with those Spores. Know that Teddy was able to kind of work around them. So bringing in Rayquaza in its place and the Airlock ability. Groudon protecting up this turn, keeping itself safe from any fake out that may come through in the Necrozma, also just protecting. So P getting essentially a free switch in to Rayquaza there. Incineroar didn't try and fake out, it did go after the Throat Chop after the Necrozma with that, but this is a change from game number 2. Teddy double protected, and P just decided to change up his board position, knowing he'd get away with it for free.
And that Amoonguss is safe in the back to make an appearance once Trick Room is on the field. That being said, I'm not even sure Teddy will have the opportunity to set it up. We saw that Rayquaza knock out that Groudon, in a couple of hits with the Earth Power. We saw how much damage that Throat Chop did to that Necrozma. We saw how much Earth Power did to that Stakataka. Teddy has to, survive a lot before he'll get the speed control up.
Yeah, well, the Earth Power only doing a little bit to Necrozma, but importantly, P follows it up with a Throat Chop. We saw how much he did in game 1, and Dawnwing's Necrozma removed from play in the second turn of the game. No matter what it was trying to do, it wasn't afforded that opportunity. Groudon on Teddy's side of the field will fire back with an Earth Power, but only bringing the Incineroar down to just under half. Teddy was probably hoping that the double target would head towards something like that Groudon, and he'd be able to set up the Trick Room. He was going to lose a Pokemon if he didn't switch that turn, as long as the P double target. He then went after that Dawnwing's Necrozma, and his Trick Room options are going to be so limited now. This Rayquaza has come in, it's got the perfect partner to deal with either of his potential Trick Room setters, and it honestly may be able to just run away with this game if Teddy's not able to answer it very, very quickly. We do have an interesting little adaptation though.
Yeah, that Mawile will bring the Intimidate with it on the field. It does have access to Mega Evolution, and that'll certainly make it more powerful. It will have access to Fairy-type moves, which could threaten this Rayquaza, but Incineroar does have access to Flare Blitz, will be able to deal some big damage to that Mawile. Mawile also weak to Earth Power, so I think Teddy was sort of hoping that this Mawile would make an appearance maybe under that Trick Room when it would be moving first, when it would threaten down these Pokemon on P's side of the field.
Well, this is another one of the Pokemon that really doesn't appreciate the combination of Rayquaza and Incineroar. A Fire-type attack, always a problem, and knowing about Earth Power over on Mawile, also a problem. Rayquaza does decide to protect along with the Mawile. Incineroar tries to leave the field with U-turn, not allowed, as that lands into the protecting Mawile there. And Groudon follows up with that Incineroar, punishing it for not being able to get out by knocking it out with an Earth Power. So Teddy French does level up the count to 3 and 3, but the board position still looking pretty favorable for P in just the pure amount of pressure he's able to provide with that Rayquaza.
And it is going to be the Rayquaza that Teddy is going to have to find a way to defeat if he wants to win that title of World Champion. Looking at the Pokemon that P's brought with him to every single game, you had to assume it would be that Tapu Fini in the back of his party, and Tapu Fini, the Rayquaza has not Mega Evolved. Airlock is still in effect, so does have access to Scald and definitely can start targeting down that Groudon, which leaves Rayquaza free to target that Mawile with something like the Earth Power. If P plays this right, and if Teddy gets caught off guard or otherwise doesn't protect his Pokemon properly, he could lose the only thing he really has that threatens Rayquaza at this moment in time.
Yeah, the Mawile's got to stay safe, but Earth Power not going to be very well appreciated by a Mawile there. And as long as he calls the protect right, I think P is going to put himself in the driver's seat at the end of this turn. Teddy really struggling without the Trick Room to get enough attacks in. He's having to play on the back foot a little bit, having to make sure something's protected each turn. But as soon as he reveals one of the protects, of course P knows you can't, or you can try and protect twice in a row, or you could just try and take something out. Mawile leaving the field, going to show us his last Pokemon. It is the Stakataka, and this could be a really unfortunate switch in. Groudon protects, doesn't want to be caught by the Scold play right here. And we'll see exactly where these attacks go. Rayquaza's Earth Power lands on the incoming stack attacker, immediately removed from play with that super effective hit. This adaptation has been paying off in bucket loads for P, and Tapu Fini's Scold over towards the protecting Groudon. He's now up another Pokemon in the count, 3-2 in this World Championship Finals, and he's really in a fantastic position. This Rayquaza's Earth Power threatening both Pokemon on Teddy's side of the field. It's a move we haven't seen on it all that much over the course of this weekend, but the adaptation is paying dividends for him right now.
And the Groudon otherwise would normally be a difficult matchup, I think, for the team that P brought with him. So just really great team building, really great preparation for this tournament. He's just a couple of Earth Powers away from getting the title of World Champion. Really, I think all he has to do is try and target down that Mawile with that Earth Power. We know Scald is going to move, you know, prior to that Groudon. It's going to do some nice damage because of the airlock in play. You know, even if it doesn't knock that Groudon out, we saw it going for Eruption. We saw that was really the only fire type attack we saw. We know Earth Power won't connect with Rayquaza because it's flying. So
well,
if he can find a way to knock it out with Sucker Punch plus something else, he's still in this game. But again, it's a very tall ask.
Well, we do see the Groudon as the target of the Earth Power. It is clinging on with a small amount of health after that critical hit, but Tapu Fini will be able to follow up with the Scald there, and Groudon removed from play. That Sucker Punch, a great effort by that Mawile to deal the damage, maybe hoping it would get one attack in before receiving an Earth Power, but at 3-1, this count looking so hard for Teddy to make a comeback from. P has played this so wisely. Rayquaza saw Groudon protect the previous turn, sent an Earth Power that way. Tapu Fini following up with a Scald, knowing that he can probably deal with the Mawile. Of course, Mawile did a whole lot of damage to Rayquaza, but Tapu Fini is certainly free to just sit there and start throwing damage down no matter what it does to Rayquaza.
There's also the Amoonguss in the back of P's party, which could use something like Rage Powder to redirect those Sucker Punches as well. So Teddy, he needs to have called this Protect correctly, and he needs to go for some big damage if he wants to try and stay in this game.
Well, he's going to just match that Protect over there. Mawile protecting itself as well. The Icy Wind from Tapu Fini, not really too much of a concern. Of course, Rayquaza is going to get felled by another Sucker Punch based on how much it did last time. But you've got to think Tapu Fini does have options to deal some damage. It does have Scald. It could get the burn and make this really, really taxing. And we'll see exactly what P decides to do. He knows that Sucker Punch is Teddy's big out right now, and you can't Sucker Punch something on the way in. Amoonguss landing on the field right there.
He didn't go for Sucker Punch.
He didn't. No, the Icy Wind landing first. We'll see exactly how much that does. Not too much, but P just trying to switch things up. Mawile's Play Rough will be going towards this Tapu Fini, doing a whole lot of damage and not quite enough to knock it out. More than enough to activate the Berry, though. Getting nice and close. We know that another Play Rough would get there, and it's going to be quite interesting. This Amoonguss probably in a good position to just start trying to keep things safe with the Rage Powder. Can't Spore right now, the Misty Terrain's limiting it from that, but it's not like a Pokemon that only has one job. Tapu Fini protecting itself in this instance. Maybe even trying to look to get a Spore down after we see the Misty Terrain expire. Amoonguss protects itself. Mawile's Play Rough heads towards Tapu Fini, and that earlier Icy Wind probably coming up trumps now. It is going to be the real easy option for Amoonguss to just Spore that Pokemon.
And P using that double Protect, again, to stall out the end of that Misty Terrain, to put Mawile to sleep and give him the opportunity to try and get that title of World Champion.
Well, Tapu Fini is going to get caught by a Sucker Punch, not too much damage there. Mawile getting caught with the Skull. The burn means it's not going to be doing all that much damage. The Spore does fail because the burn is already in play, but I don't think P minds that too much. Either status condition was going to be enough for him to start looking all the way to the title of 2019 World Champion. He's just got to play through a couple more turns.
He has to play through a couple more turns, and he has to find a way to get that Rayquaza back onto the field in a safe way, or just deal damage with the Amoonguss and that Tapu Fini itself. Those Scalds are adding up. They're huge.
Yeah, those Scalds have added up. The Play Rough will fell the Tapu Fini, so that's going to be in a position where it's just 2-1. But with the burn, we know that the Rayquaza took so much damage pre-burn. The reduction in the attack means Mawile has no way to fight back, and obviously it's on a timer anyway with the burn damage. They are playing this one all the way out. Both players putting on a fantastic show here today. Mawile given his last opportunity to fight back here, but the Rayquaza and Amoonguss for Piwu being such a fantastic combination. The Rayquaza really putting in work in this final set.
And Rayquaza just not even mega evolving until the final turn of the game. Just incredible execution from P in that regard. Did not let that Groudon keep the sunlight on the field to its advantage, and just, you know, sort of ending the game with a little bit of style.
Well, here we go. Rayquaza with the extreme speed. It is enough to confirm the knockout on Mawile, and Piwu will be your 2019 Junior Division World Champion for the video game. A fantastic set. Back and forth. Game 1 going his way. Game 2, Teddy taking it back with fantastic trick room play. But in Game 3, he makes the adaptations he needs right from turn 1 and becomes the world champion. Teddy, a great performance, a fantastic year, but not quite enough.
What an exciting game to watch as well. Both these trainers just making amazing adaptations. I loved how Teddy changed up his strategy from Game 1 going into Game 2, leading that Groudon, leading that Necrozma, and just really threatening the Pokemon that P relied on in Game 1 to sort of handle the Trick Room effectively. Unfortunately, though, P able to make those adaptations, just an amazing switch that turn 1 of Game 3, sending in that Rayquaza when he knew Teddy would be protecting both of his Pokemon, and then just from there on out, the constant threat of those Earth powers, the constant application of that pressure kept Trick Room away and just brought him all the way to the title of World Champion.
I really like how that set played out, actually, and the Junior Division showing that they know their way around a big, important match. Such well-played choices in both the second and third game. Both trainers learning from what happened in the game before. Teddy taking a lot of information from Game 1, knowing what caused him trouble, and then adapting to that, changing his lead, most importantly, and putting more pressure down on Amoonguss. But our new world champion, Piwu, just turns around at the end and says, even though I don't change my lead, I'm going to change my play. I'm going to take advantage of the double protect you just showed me, and I'm going to put Rayquaza in. Not only is it Rayquaza, it's a Rayquaza with Earth Power, the Earth Power beating Stack Attacker, taking so much damage off Groudon. That Mawile that Teddy switched it up to, we didn't see his fourth Pokemon in Game 2, but we did see it in Game 3, and that was easily handled by the threat of Earth Power. Just fantastic play throughout all 3 games.
Yeah, and, you know, shout-outs to that core of Amoonguss, Incineroar, Tapu Fini. You know, I think those are probably 3 of the most popular support Pokemon in the Ultra Series format. You know, they work so well together. They have amazing synergy and just really support each other and allow them to get those moves and allow them to support whatever restricted Pokemon that they bring in.